Hi, I'm Danny and these are my Diecast Disasters. In this video I'm going to be making a Mad Max style Buzzard vehicle out of this little Hot Wheels Ratical racer. So I was perusing the new 2020 Hot Wheels that had been put out in the shop in town, and I noticed this one there. And I figured it'd make a fun Mad Max project. So this casting was first introduced in 2013 and it was called the Bad Ratitude. And then it was renamed to the Ratical Racer in 2016. And this 2020 version is for the Chinese Year of the Rat. So I've drilled out the post there. The body of the car is actually plastic, as only the base is metal on this toy. Now I'm going to cut the axles and take those wheels out, as I'm not going to be reusing those. Okay, so there's the car apart. Before I start fabricating anything on it, I'm just test fitting the wheels. So I've got some off-road Matchbox wheels I've salvaged for the rear, but they don't fit. They're just a little bit too big, so I'm going to have to make them sit a little bit lower. So I'm just going to take a cutting disc on my Dremel. I'm going to cut this notch where the axle goes a little bit deeper. There we go, the wheels are sitting in there. Plenty of room now. Okay, so I can move on to some fabrication. So the distinguishing feature of the Buzzard vehicles is that they are covered with spikes. To make my spikes, I've got a thick sheet of styrene. I'm just going to cut some thin strips off of it. So there we go, and now I can just use my craft knife to carve some little spikes out of this and then chop them off. So there we go, there's a couple of little spikes. I'll just keep going until I've got a pile of them. Just before I glue on my spikes, I'm going to use a file here to carve a few dents and gouges into the body of the car. And then I'm just going to use some super glue and glue on my spikes. So I get a decent blob of the glue on the base. It's thick super glue because I want it to sort of fill up the space between the spike and the base. And I hold them on there for about 10 seconds. Then they'll be glued on enough to hold themselves. So I just keep gluing on spikes until they're all used up. There we go, it's starting to look more like a Buzzard vehicle, I think. I use some styrene rod to cut out a couple of larger spikes to go on the back. So there we go, there's all of my spikes stuck on. Next thing I did was to cut out a few little armor plates from some styrene tread plate. Just stuck them on the lower sides and the rear. So that's the body done. For the base, all I'm going to do is to add a little pilot or cow catcher or whatever you call them on the front. I've just made that out of a couple of little pieces of styrene tread plate. There's the fabrication done. Now I can move on to some painting. I begin by hitting the body of the car with some black. This is some tough black out of a spray can. It'll just give me a nice tough base to work on. And over this I sprayed some Vallejo metal colour steel. That's quite a dark metallic colour. And then from the top downwards I sprayed on some metal colour silver. So I've got a kind of two-tone metal paint job where it's a bit lighter on top. Next I use some burnt red and dry rust effect paint, and I've airbrushed on some rust. Next thing I did was to apply a black wash over all of this, so that it'll start to bring out some of the details. Here it is after the black wash is dried. Next thing I'm going to do is apply some silver weathering powder, and this will just help to highlight all the details. And of course, once I was finished applying the weathering powder, it was all sealed with a thin coat of matte varnish. Okay, so here's the base. I've hit this with the same black paint, then with some steel, then the burnt red and rust effect to make it look rusty. Here it is after a black wash. And for highlighting this part, I'm actually going to dry brush it with some silver paint. Oh, I'll get it back in focus there. And here it is after that dry brushing. again, this was sealed with a light coat of matte varnish. Okay, so moving on to the motor and the interior there. I think they've made it in two parts, so I guess it could be different colours. Maybe that even glows in the dark. Anyway, it's not important to me. I'm going to glue the two parts together so they're a bit easier to work with. Next, I use a small round burr on my Dremel, just hollow out the end of the exhaust pipes. Now I hit the whole thing with the black. So I've got my nice base to work on. And I painted all this in silver. Next, I applied some rust weathering powders just to give it a lightly rusted appearance. These were sealed with some matte varnish. So there we go, that's how it was looking after that. Next I applied a black wash. Here it is after that's dried. And then finally I applied some blue, metallic blue weathering powder to the end of the pipes there. And some silver weathering powder over the rest of it. And so the last thing was the wheels. I don't know what happened to the old wheels, I've thrown them away. But these are the ones I'm going to use to replace it. So there's this Matchbox ones for the rear. Then they're Hot Wheels ones I'm going to use for the front. Actually some of the only really nice Hot Wheels rims that they make. So I started out by painting the black rims of both of these sets of wheels in silver. And once they were dry, I applied a black wash. And then once the black wash was dried, I applied some rust weathering powders. And this was sealed with some matte varnish. And then finally I finished the tyres by brushing on some dust weathering powder. And again, this was sealed with matte varnish. And so with all the hard work done, here are the parts of our little Ratical racer. Mad Max Buzzard Custom, all painted up and weathered and ready to go back together. So while I'm reassembling that, let's just take a moment to look back and be reminded of what we started with. Here it is, our little Ratical racer, Chinese New Year car from the 2020 collection, fresh off the shelf. It's going to be commandeered by a gang of buzzards. Let's see what they do with it. And here it is, our finished Mad Max Buzzard Custom, made out of a Hot Wheels Ratical racer. It's been armoured and spiked up. It's been well rusted up and weathered. It's had that motor detailed there. And of course it's had some new sets of wheels with much nicer rims, albeit they've been quite rusted up. So I'm really happy with the way this looks. Definitely better than when I bought it. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. As always, a massive thanks to my awesome Patreon supporters for helping to support the channel through Patreon. And an extra special welcome to my latest Patreon, Alexander. Thank you so much, Alexander, for the support. I really appreciate it. Of course, if anyone else out there would like to help out as well, you can check out my Patreon page. There's a link in the description below. Thank you all for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Remember, if you want to see more similar stuff, subscribe and click the bell. And give the video a thumbs up and share it with your friends.